Welcome to Speak English with Tiffani. I am Teacher Tiffani. Let's jump right in. Hey Mo, what's going on?
Nothing, just laying here. I was taking a nap.
Oh, for real? You tired after work?
Yeah, and so I said, well, since I'm home alone, let me take advantage of this time and
take advantage of. Take advantage of. Now, this is an expression that means to make good use of the opportunities offered by something. So let's look at two examples to get a better understanding. So in our first example, it says this: I have to work tomorrow, so I need to take advantage of the time I have today. So the opportunity is referring to the time that we have today, okay? That's the opportunity to use that. So take advantage of the time. Now, let's look at our second example. It says, subscribers to the magazine can take advantage of this special offer, okay? So again, the opportunity being referred to is the special offer. Maybe it's a discount or something else related to the magazine, okay? Special offer. So take advantage of.
I did set an alarm so I wouldn't, sleep too long.
Okay, I see you. Alarms be saving people a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I was calling you because I saw in the program last week when we were at church that you were trying to start the sign language group at our church. Like you're going to try to teach people sign language?
Yeah. Several people that come up to me asking about sign language they want to learn. So I was like, I should go ahead and just start a group. It's more like a club.
Sign language. Sign language. Now, sign language is an official language, and it's the language that is used by individuals who may be deaf or hearing impaired. And it's a language that mainly utilizes one's hands to express a message or convey a message to another person. So we call it sign language.
I wanted to just do a club.
That sounds good. Yeah. I was going to ask you, like, a lot of people nowadays are starting to learn sign language, but even learning a second language, how hard it is for some people. I wanted to ask, like, what was your experience? Like, why did you decide to learn sign language, and how was it for you?
Well, since I was young, I've always been, like, fascinated with it, just to see people signing, like, out on the street and stuff. Like, if I was at a restaurant and I saw somebody signing, I would always be fascinated, and so I would try to learn, but just like when I'm trying to learn Spanish, I just never really committed to doing it.
Fascinated. Fascinated. Okay, this word means to draw irresistibly the attention and interest of someone. Irresistibly means you cannot resist. So without you realizing it, you are drawn to something. So let's look at the examples using this word. The first one is, I've always been fascinated by other cultures. So cultures are what fascinate this person. All right. Now, the second example, the kids were fascinated with their new toys. So when a child gets a new toy, they're usually fascinated or amazed by it, and they want to play with it for a long time. And the last example is, we were fascinated by the new technology, okay? Maybe it was a new computer, a new cell phone, or a new technology that was applied to something else, but it was fascinating. It gripped their attention. So again, fascinated.
So it just so happened I was working at this drug treatment center, and one of the social workers came in, and she had an interpreter with her, and I was like, that's what I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to learn sign language, and so I started taking a class.
Interpreter. Now, an interpreter is a person whose job is to translate what someone is saying into another language, okay? So here are some examples of this word, okay? Speaking through an interpreter, the man told us his opinion. So in this example, let's say there is a group of people, okay? And there's one group of people standing on this side right here, okay? And this man right here is the focus. And he wants to get a message to these individuals, but they don't speak the same language. So this man uses an interpreter to speak for him. So the interpreter actually takes the message from him and transfers it to these individuals, okay? An interpreter, all right? Okay, next example sentence. He was a great interpreter. Very simple sentence. And our final sentence is, they paid for the students to have an interpreter. Okay? All right, let's keep going.
Oh, wow. And as I was taking the class, it was at a library. It was a free class. So I just felt like it was like that same situation where you learn in Spanish, you're just learning the basics, and you never go any further. And I felt like that's how it was going to be in the class. Mm-hmm. And one of the people there, she was like, if you really want to learn the real sign language, you should go to Gallaudet University. I said, Gallaudet University? What is that? And so she told me it was like a deaf university in D.C. So I contacted them and found out they had night classes. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. They had night classes. And so from there, I started taking night classes. And I fell in love from the very first class. Like, the teachers were all deaf. Wow. So they were native signers. Mm-hmm. She said, instead of like, instead of like somebody who learned the language themselves teaching us, it was like they were native signers. So they really, really were all good teachers. And then I realized, I said, I want to become an interpreter where I would interpret what, like conversations that people have between each other. Mm-hmm. So I said, that's what I want to do. So, so it's like the ball started with me taking classes. And I, cracked through that ceiling where it wasn't just a basic class where I'm just learning and taking that class over and over again, like I did with Spanish.
Okay. Now, there are two expressions that we're going to look at in a little bit more detail. The first one was start or get the ball rolling. Now, the meaning of this expression is to set an activity in motion or to make a start, okay? So my friend is talking about starting a learning process, starting to learn how to do sign language. So let's look at an example using this expression. Here we go right here. It says, in order to get the ball started, the government was asked to contribute $1 million to the fund. So there was some project that needed to be done, but in order to start the project or get the ball rolling, they needed $1 million. That was the starting point, okay? All right, let's move on to the second expression, crack through. Crack through. Now, this means figuratively to overcome some difficulty or restriction in order to enter into some place or situation. Now, here's the example for this expression. After 3 years in the law firm, Sally finally cracked through the glass ceiling and was made a partner, okay? So, it's expressing that while Sally was working at her law firm, it was very difficult to move up or to get a better position. But finally, after 3 years, she became a partner. So she cracked through the difficulty, okay? So again, start or get the ball rolling and crack through.
It was actually me learning something. And then I joined a sign language club. And then I joined like different groups so I could socialize and actually use the language. I would go to silent weekends where you couldn't talk the whole weekend. And if you got caught talking, you had to pay money. And so it was like full immersion, and it would give us different scenarios.
Immersion. Okay, now this word means a method of teaching foreign language by the exclusive use of that language, usually at a special school. Now the key word here is exclusive, so you're only allowed to use that language, okay? All right, so here are some examples using the word immersion, okay? Last year, I enrolled in an immersion course in conversational English. It means the course only allowed English to be spoken during the time that the person was there, okay? All right, the next example. Full immersion programs can be expensive but beneficial. So it is true, if you go to a full immersion program, they may be expensive, but they're very beneficial because your English will improve very quickly, all right? And the last example. My daughter wants to enroll in an immersion program in Spain. Means his daughter wants to speak Spanish, but she wants to be fully immersed, only speaking that language, okay? So again, immersion.
So that we could use the language, and that used to be really fun.
Man,
yeah.
It sounds like your teachers really were good, and I think the activities like the silent, you said silent rooms? Would you say silent?
A silent weekend. Like you couldn't talk the whole weekend, yeah.
I think that was really good too. I remember when I was studying Korean, like when we first started in level 1, that was kind of the easy level. Like you're learning the basics, like you mentioned with Spanish, you learn the basics, but then you start moving to the next levels, and then the teachers start getting really creative with different ways of actually putting into practice what you were learning. So yeah, that made a big difference for me too. So it was really enjoyable as well. When did you feel like you really had a good grasp of what you had learned? You know, like, oh, okay, I can actually speak sign language now.
That's interesting because I don't even remember. I remember feeling frustrated, like I'm not gonna be able to do this.
Have a good grasp. One more time. Have a good grasp of, all right? Now, this means to have a firm, clear understanding or determination of something, okay? Have a grasp of, have a good grasp of. So let's look at 2 examples. The first example says, do you have a solid grasp of the material we learned in class? So in this example, the focus is the material that was learned in class. And the person is asking, do you understand clearly what was discussed in class? Okay. All right. And our second example says, the students had a good grasp of the lesson that the teacher was teaching. So again, it's talking about material from class, but this time the lesson that the teacher was teaching, okay? Did you understand? Do you know what she was saying? Okay, so again, understanding. So having a good grasp of.
And I felt like, and it's funny because it started with the ABCs. I'm like, I'm never going to be able to memorize the ABCs. I'm like, it's 26 letters, and there's no way I'm going to be able to memorize these 26 letters. But, you know, I had to commit the time to study and just socialize and be around people. So I'm thinking, like, during those silent weekends, it was like, you know how you put a drop in a bucket, and each drop, you know, you start, at first you don't notice, like, there's warm water accumulating, and then over time, it's like, oh, there's actually some water up in here.
Accumulate. Now, this means to gather together or acquire an increasing number or quantity of, okay? So let's see some examples of how this word is used. The first one is, the snow was accumulating on the ground. It means coming up into a pile on the ground, all right? Next, journals are accumulating in my office. It means there are more journals each and every day, okay? And he accumulated a fortune in the music business. He earned a lot more money. Now, my friend is talking about accumulating more knowledge of sign language, more words, more expressions, and more ways of how to use it properly. So again, accumulate.
So that's how I felt like eventually I was like, oh, I actually know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, with sign language, because it's a visual language and you kind of incorporate not acting, but like not mime either, because they hate that mime.
Oh, they don't
But
want it to be called miming in their language.
yeah, it's more like what is it? Like when you take on the personality. It's like because of all of that, and I'm kind of that anyway. Like when I talk to people, if I'm telling you what somebody said, like I'm going to become that person. So in sign language, that is a part of the language. So that's what really helped me. But there's still some areas I struggle with. Every time I work, because this is what I do as a professional, I learn something new, and I always ask myself, what can I learn new with this language? And that's another drop in that bucket of water that's accumulating every job, and just trying to learn.
I think that's the best piece of advice for anybody learning another language, because a lot of times, even when I was teaching my students when I lived in Korea, there was this feeling of wanting to know everything possible about English when they were talking to me. The teacher, I want to know everything. And the reality is you're constantly learning, even as Americans. Like, even though we speak English, we're always learning something new, some new slang or a new word or some new expression that comes out. So I think the fact that you actually know that when you're, even though it's your profession, like you are an amazing interpreter, you still realize every day you're learning something new. So great advice. Great advice. I hope you enjoyed this Real English Conversation. It's the last in a 4-part series of conversations with real native English speakers. Please continue to study English by clicking on the video on the left or the right of your screen to continue studying with me. And remember, as always, to speak English.